Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glen Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week I want to talk about stop accepting that it can't be done or taking no for an answer. I literally just returned from Royal Bank in Canada. So originally I went to the Royal Bank in Kitchener and they told me they were going to put a hold on my certified check. And I was a little upset by this, but anyway, I basically took my check back and I said, I'm just going to take it to a different bank. There shouldn't be a hold on a certified check. And the whole time they were telling me was 7 days, which was the same as a regular check. So it made no sense for me to pay to get it certified. But then I got thinking, I'm like, for me, the most convenient spot to put it right now, just the way my accounts are lined up, was into Royal Bank. So, and this is also a certified check from myself to myself, just from one of my accounts, coming from a Scotiabank account just down the road. And I drove to another RBC branch in Cambridge this time, and I was like, okay, let's see if they do the same thing, because maybe, everything's different from branch to branch and depends who you get for holds and stuff. So I went in, here's the check, and they're like, oh, there's going to be a 7-day hold, and went through the same routine, and then they're like, yeah, a 7-day hold, and I said, well, why is there a hold? And they go, well, we want to make sure the check clears. And I said, well, if I could prove that the check will clear, do we have an issue? And they're like, well, I guess not. And I'm like, well, isn't it a certified check anyway? And they're like, yeah, but we don't, it could be. They really didn't give me a straight answer. So I'm like, well, if I went back to Scotiabank and got more proof of this check, would that be sufficient? And they said, yeah, I guess so. And this is after they said, there's no way we can deposit this without a hold. But really, just a few extra questions and you could get this check to go through. So I went back to Scotiabank. They printed out my statement. They stamped it. They printed out the transaction, stamped it. I took it back to Royal Bank. It went through, no hold. Boom. It was just a couple questions, right? It's just a couple questions. And this stuff happens, I find it a lot in U.S. real estate because the stuff we're buying is riddled with problems usually. To tell you another quick story, we were buying a property in northwest Dayton, Ohio. And the property, when we went to close the property 2 days before, the title company, our title company, tells us, yeah, this deal's dead. It's dead. You got to walk away. It's all dead. All an email. And I pick up the phone and I call them and I say, why is it dead? Well, first problem is the contract. It has the wholesaler's name on the contract and the title company on the seller's title company won't accept it. They're saying you can't assign this contract. And so first of all, we basically had to do 1,000 phone calls and get some paperwork signed, solve the problem. Anyway. So, okay, now are we good to close? Are we good to close? And I go back to my title company and they're like, no, we're not good to close. The contract says that we'll only close with the seller's title company. So the deal's dead again. Oh, okay. So the deal's dead because he won't go with your seller company. So it's not really dead. It's dead to you. It's dead because they won't work with you. But we have a catch-22 here because there's a lender involved. The problem is my lender in Georgia will not lend except for with their title company. And the seller won't sell unless they use their title company. So you're at a catch-22. And they're saying the deal's dead. We're done. The whole thing's over. You should walk away. You're going to lose your deposit. Everything's dead. And I'm like, no. Let's solve the problem. Let's solve the problem. Like, it's a good enough deal. I still want it. Let's make it work. Think outside of the box. So, okay, what's the problem? The problem is my lender needs a certain title company. Their seller needs a certain title company. So let's go back to the seller and see if they'll negotiate to go to my title company. I did. No game. They're saying they will only use their title company. That's what they feel comfortable with. Done. So my lender will not lend on this deal with the other title company. Okay, so let's think here. What can we do? Well, One thing we do is switch lenders, but we're 2 days before, so we can't really do that. But I talked to the lender, I talked to the title company. Okay, how about we use the seller's lender? We go find some gap funding, we close the property in cash, and then we close immediately with the other title company into financing. If you ever do this, just so you know, it isn't an instant transaction, which it should be. They need to get paperwork filed with the state, and then they'll redo it and change it to your into the loan. Makes no sense, but just so you know, that is a thing that happens. So it will take you probably 3 days. So that's what we do. Okay, we're going to close this with cash. Problem solved. So I go and call up the seller's title company. Okay, we got a way to do this. I'm going to close with cash. We're good. The seller's title company goes, yeah, but we really ran all the information based on the wholesaler in the contract. We didn't know about your corporation, so we weren't have this thing set up to even close into a corporation. We have it closing with cash to this other wholesaler. So there's a mess of paperwork. So basically what I did was then I'm like, what do you need to get this done? And how can I make it easier for you? Well, they're like, well, we need corporate documents yesterday. Okay, here's all the corporate documents. What do you need verification? I can pull up extra stuff for them, and that's what I did. I made it as easy as I could for them, and that's how we actually closed the deal. We made it work so that I closed in cash. 3 days later, closed into financing, used the gap funding. It worked, right? This happens, we do this all the time, is because that's where you get your best deals, is to solve problems. We bought a property in Alabama, just south of Huntsville, and the bank was selling it as a foreclosure. They wanted $86,000 for the property. And what happened is people would come through and they would buy the property from the bank, sign the contract, and then whenever title went to do title, every time they'd find that the property line was going right through the middle of the garage, and they'd walk away. And they sold the property over and over and over again, and nobody could close. Nobody wanted this property with a tainted title. And so what do we do? How should I be walking away from this deal? No, look, there's an issue, and I'm willing to take on the problem if the solution is cheap enough. So instead of just buying this property, first of all, get the property under contract so that it doesn't disappear on you. Put it under contract, ask for a little bit longer for due diligence. Cool. Then we're going to go and find an attorney that specializes in this exact thing. So just talk to your closing company, title company, whoever's closing this property, get some referrals to other companies. And so we found a guy that was awesome. We ended up using Cronwell Title in Huntsville, and he was like, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario to fix this line? And they said probably $10,000 to fix the property line, and that means paying some money to the neighbors for 10 feet by 200 feet, because it's a big lot, paying and buying that chunk off of them. Okay, well, that seems easy enough. Give them some money, and then we need to get a survey done and then register it, and he would do all the rest of it and get it all done. Cool. This story turned out to be quite the fiasco because the neighbor who owned that chunk of land that we were trying to buy off of them was in and out of prison, and so we had to hire a private investigator as well to chase him around and find him in whichever penitentiary he was in at the time. We'd find him and then he'd get out, and then we didn't find him, and so we ended up taking the risk, and we paid to get all the surveys and everything done, and then we just waited. And so we're like, okay, where is he? And finally they got the private investigator called. He's in prison again. Cool, get him over, sign paperwork. So anyway, we did this. But the part of the story that's interesting is, so they wanted $86,000 for it. I said, well, no one can close on that. It's very expensive to fix this property line issue. How about $50,000? Because I need to fix an issue in order for me to be able to sell this property later because it has a clouded title. And they said, no, that's impossible. So I didn't care. I sent them an offer for $50,000 anyway. And they returned the offer, and then I sent another offer for $50,000, and they countered at $59,000 again, and finally we accepted the $59,000. When we got to the closing table, something got screwed up, and they only had one of our contracts for $50,000. So we got the property for $50,000, which is awesome. But the thing is, a lot of people walk away from these kind of problems. And you don't have to know how to solve them. You don't have to know how to find the people to solve the problems. And when there's problems and people saying no, don't accept those answers. Ask questions. See what the issue is that they're having. See what their problem is, and then see if it's something you can solve. Like I said, put properties under contract so they don't disappear while you're doing all this work. But put it under contract. Go see if you can solve problems. If there's property back taxes, is one a lot of things we see often. You can negotiate those with the city. The city. So you can go in, or the county. Sorry, you negotiate those with the county. So maybe you get this place under contract, and then you go negotiate in your due diligence period to see what you can get them to reduce it to, and that's still. You're accepting those taxes when you close, so you put that into your purchase price, factoring in. But maybe that's, based on those numbers, it's based on what you're buying, not what you've negotiated to be in the future. So you've solved your own problems. Anyway, there's lots of things to negotiate on. There's lots of things to solve. And my main thing is to stop accepting that this isn't exactly what you want, and find people that can solve the problems for you. We're going to go into a great period right now with this COVID stuff. There's going to be deals, there's going to be problems, and problems plus COVID, you can probably find some amazing deals. I hope this was helpful. I probably could have came up with like dozens of stories, because almost every property I buy has some type of issue with it, and then we solve the problem to get an extra discount. But anyway, any questions, send me an email, glen@glensutherland.com. I don't pitch this much, but I do have a Facebook group for my book club. If you want to read a book with us every month, come join us, and we'll talk about the book at the end of the month. Hope that helps. I'll talk to you all next week. Thanks. Bye.